Because while logistics, people talk about trains and trucks and technologies, it's really people business. So it's probably more a people business than many other sectors because there's so many players involved. And my conviction is that collaboration is going to make the difference in the future. So what I wanted to do is give you some examples of collaborations that have worked in the hope to inspire some new ways of thinking of, you know, what New Zealand might do. So what I showed before was a SmartWay leadership framework, and one of the 5 things that we really think is needed for businesses to work together is collaborate and exchange. So the 3 types of collaboration is about open between different partners, vertical and horizontal. So I'm going to give examples particularly about the vertical and horizontal collaboration types. So just to start with some vertical collaboration. Within a supply chain, and this is what I think is a very key point, you can look at shipper, LSP and carrier, but where the trend is going to go is this. And this will have a profound effect on the sector. Right now it's the race to the bottom. Whoever can cheapest transport my good I want. A shipper will now want to be able to get rid of a carrier with the drop of a hat, because if you get it somewhere cheaper, that's possible. The moment the efficiency gains are there because of collaboration between multiple shippers, you cannot just do that. Yeah, so I think that in a way a solution for the current situation with carriers is that by promoting and stimulating collaboration within the supply chain, not just like this, but also between shippers, you're going to create a better situation for carriers, because then reliability and longer term comes into play. So there's hope. The one that I really like, and I met this lady, she's 26, she's Dutch, her mother is Greek, there was a Greek crisis, she thought, right, I'm going to go there and seek a business opportunity, and everybody declared her crazy. And she set up Joint Cargo, which is a logistics platform, and what she discovered after studying many of these logistics platforms is that right now many of them operate like eBay. So a shipper will say, I've got the goods to be transferred somewhere, bid for it. So what happens? Carriers are bidding below, and they have to go really below the cost price. But she turned it around. So her strength of her program is like airtickets.com. You check which airline still have seat available, I buy that seat. And she does the same. So here carriers that join and that say, I'm driving from Greece to Holland, I've still got 2 cubic meters left in my truck. Who wants it at a price of 80 or 60 or 40 euro, and the price of that extra space is cheaper than if a shipper were to have to hire a carrier directly. So both gain, and she gets 10% of whatever price was agreed. It really works, it's growing massively because the carriers see the benefit, they can't lose. Yeah. Another one that I really like is from Procter & Gamble and Tupperware. These people met at a drinks, yeah, so it was really not arranged, it was just they met at drinks. And it's all about trust, and they were talking about shampoos being so heavy, so the moment you load the truck half, you're already at the weight capacity, and the Tupperware guy saying, well, you know, we've got the opposite problem, we're just carrying air. They decided to join forces. They're driving from Belgium to Greece, so they have similar destination routes. Not only that, but Tupperware, because they're a smaller company, but joining forces with Procter & Gamble, they were able to use intermodal transport much more. And as a result, they save 150,000 truck kilometers, 200 tons of CO2, and 10% less transportation costs. Everybody wins. Now, this is Jumbo, which is sort of one of our big supermarket chains in the Netherlands. And these 5 companies got together through a program called Lean and Green that really builds a community of shippers and carriers trying to organize awards and sessions and seminars to really get the communication between them flowing. And in those meetings, they found that they were all having their goods manufactured in the east of the country, and the main warehouse was in Woerden, which is sort of center of the country. And at the moment, they were all carrying their own goods to this distribution center. And if you're SCA Hygiene, that's like toilet paper and things, you're not going to go with a truck half full. So you take a full truckload there. And at the distribution center, they were faced with massive piles of stock, right? So what they do, they jointly looked for a logistics service provider to see, can we do this better? And they do. So they have less trucks going, combining goods from the different providers, and just maximizing the load load factor for these trucks. And at the distribution center, they have much less stock. Yeah? Savings, 40% less stock. 40% less deliveries, so imagine the labor costs associated with that. 30% higher truckload factor, 35 less transport kilometers, 35% lower CO2. Now when I see a case like this, I think, are we going to make that 30-40% emission reduction? Definitely. I then can see that happening. This is hugely popular right now. I can't believe since the 8 years I've been working on that, only in the last year I've bumped at least 10 companies that are working on optimizing logistics supply chain. These have become so complex, so what they do is they grab data from a company, put them in a database and try making algorithm, so a lot of mathematicians involved, to see how can we do this better. And this is a company from Germany, and they worked for Toyota and Ford in the US to see how can we optimize the routing. Now on top of that you can look at warehousing. Yeah? So these companies are now looking, instead of, their policy becomes, we don't compete in the truck, we compete in the car showroom. But really, the pre-competitiveness, what you were saying, is starting to happen here. Massive savings for this company, 10-20% at least. Yeah? You also can have in reverse logistic chain. So this is a case study from China. Unilever has factories and warehouses in China. They take the goods to Walmart distribution center that subsequently takes it to 300 stores around in 100 Chinese cities. Now, China is as big as Europe, so you can imagine a bit of kilometers traveled there. The problem was that the trucks from the Walmart going to the stores came back empty, and the trucks from Unilever to the distribution center came back empty. They put 2 and 2 together, and now, where possible, so it's not possible everywhere, but where possible, the trucks from Walmart, when they go to the stores, they pass by the Unilever factories, pick up the goods and take them to the distribution center. Very easy. Now these ones are possible because they work already together. But imagine if a business council, for example, starts working with a group of companies that only know each other by name and starts mapping, where are your locations, where are you looking at, and you start getting a system of collaboration. So again, many empty trucks, and well, for the company, what's important, it was 10% transport cost reduction for Unilever in this case. And of course, that then gets back into how much Walmart pays for the goods. Yeah, I'm sure that they have some sort of sharing the benefits here. So my main point about this one is that you can look at your own supply chain. You can be a lion or whatever company you are, and you're thinking, right, I'm going to look at my supply chain. Can I optimize the location of the warehouses, the routing, the modes, whatever is possible? But if you start looking at 5 manufacturers, and I know there's many wine companies in Hawke's Bay, Blenheim, you know, who could think about this together, it would be fantastic. And there's like fruit companies, so there's a lot of similar type companies located in the same location, but with markets in the same different locations. If you now start looking, oh, but there's also certain consumer products. I'm sure there's tourist products made from wool made in Blenheim as well that could be going up to Auckland too. You start putting them together. So there's cross-sectoral supply chains. And then if you start thinking about your transport system, so now you're thinking, what's going in a city, what's going in a port? Yeah? This is where I think a business council and an ECAP, you know, this is the area where you guys should focus. Try and map the potential and seek who wants to lead. And you can start with one company or a few and just build it up. But the philosophy is there. This has a name, it's called the Internet of Things. And it's totally going to change the sector as we know it. So goods will be transported not by one manufacturer to one customer using one intermediary carrier, but you're going to send it just like us over the internet. Who cares who's taking that as long as it gets there? What route you're taking, I don't know how my emails reach Holland, I don't care. And that's what's going to happen with the internet. Now, with the logistics system. In order to make this happen, you need trust, you need good regulation, you need collaboration. The benefit that I do see for carriers is that for companies to put their trust into a broader system that they don't all control, they want reliability. So I think there's an opportunity to sort of anticipate the development coming and see how can we, on the back of that, make sure that the conditions under which carriers work can be improved. So I think then 30% emission reduction target that New Zealand has set itself, very feasible this way. Not if you only look at one company. This one is a retailer in Holland, and it's Albert Heijn, and they bought a webshop, bol.com, and the guy who set it up, he set it up when he was 25. I studied with him, and he was sick of studying, quit his studies, and was a multimillionaire before the age of 30. So I did something wrong. Yeah. So it means books online, because he started selling student books because he felt that that was too expensive, and it grew from there. Albert Heijn bought bol.com. And it was really the reason why they started doing that is because they saw the need to have an online platform for grocery shopping. But then they realized, hang on, we can also, what they found that with the delivery of goods, at 1 out of 3 trips when you go to people's homes, someone's not there. So you have to go again. Hugely expensive, yeah? So then they start thinking, hang on, what we'll do, instead of going to people's home, people can also say, no, don't worry, I'll pick it up myself at the supermarket, and all the parcels of totally different products that bol.com sells online, you can pick them up there as well. The added benefit, more groceries in the store, because you pick up your parcel, so you go and get your spaghetti and your bolognese sauce in that supermarket instead of another one. So the thinking behind it was so super strategic. The benefit, of course, for us is that because you have less missed calls at home delivery, you get emission reduction. That was not their aim, but it is the added benefit of these things happening. So let me give a few examples of horizontal collaboration. So that what I mean by that is it's not within industry or not between businesses, but between the broader private sector or with governments and civil society. I had hundreds, Ian, I really had to pick a few. And this trip has actually inspired me that next year I'm going to put together a publication of collaborations that work, because I really think that could be helpful. First, and I'm very glad I put this one in. This is Brazil. I lived as a kid in Brazil, and so I speak Portuguese, so any invitation to go to Brazil, I go. And I met Bruno, who heads the Brazil Federation for Transport Associations. So imagine you have trucking associations and taxi drivers and bus drivers and LSPs, and they're sort of the umbrella for that. And they found that drivers was a real challenge. The skill sets, again, low entry levels, it was farmers getting into trucks. Yeah? And they set up 149 centers around the country for drivers. And the funding comes from the member associations and the big companies that are members. So DHL or TNT might contribute separately. What they do, they give training. So I was there taking the photos when they had a training. They give training to drivers about safety, about security, about fuel efficiency. As actual fact, we went to them to see them because we want to improve their fuel efficiency training. They also have medical facilities, so there's a doctor and dentist, there's a physiotherapist for the backs, there's even advice on drugs, because a lot of these drivers use drugs to stay awake because they've got to drive thousands of kilometers. And they have social events, of course, football. Yeah. Now what it has done, because I was like, wow, it's interesting, and I said, wow, that's very nice of you. He said, it's not about being nice. He said, I see that this sector desperately needs drivers. We are so undercut. Anybody who's a driver does not want his son to be a driver as well. The moment they can get out, they are out. So what you see constant deterioration of quality. He says, I need this to make being a driver more dignifying and to keep people in. So the medical facilities were crucial in this, because if you're a driver and you have a family at home and you're going up to the northeast and you're 3 weeks away on end, if your kid gets sick, you're so happy that they can go somewhere. So it's not just for the drivers, also for the family. And it has really contributed to a massive retention of the drivers. So I've thought, huge vision, and I think New Zealand should do something like it. Make it yours, I mean, adapt it, but the philosophy behind it, I think, is universal. And if you want to organize a study tour, I can help you. Yeah. So more dignifying, more drivers stay in the sector instead of seeing it as a problem. I'm not going to read the whole slide. My point here is that in getting old trucks off the road, it helps to get truck replacement schemes. So whether the government wants to get Euro 1 trucks or Euro 3 trucks off the road, or drayage trucks, which are the ones in ports, they can give a subsidy to drivers, one-off, and they can have the base capital to buy a newer truck, maybe one that's maybe 5 years old, maybe not solely new, but at least newer. Similar can be applied to electric vehicles. So if you want to try and encourage electric vehicle take-up, you can see if you can get a replacement scheme. The table I put in there just because to show it's been tried and it's working in many, many places. So this is where I think a government can really play a role if you want a transition of the fleet. This one I like because it was in Paris, La Petite Reine, which means the little queen, and that's sort of a nickname for bicycles. They have, these are delivery bikes, and of course very French design, you know, looking really elegant. And they are electric, and they have tricycles and vans, and they take them from big stores to consumer homes. So just you talk about retailers or the Walmart or whatever, taking it to people's home. What happened is, in addition to that, they got policy support. So the government then made the infrastructure better, so they made the biking paths, as they were developing new ones, a little bit wider, because these are just a touch wider, so they could be more safely biking around. They have access to city centers where delivery vans do not. Yeah? Pedestrian areas, they can get to tourist spaces, they can go in the bus lanes, so there's dedicated bus lanes, these can go there as well. And because of that policy support, this became a success. So it was sort of where the government is able to just give that little extra to make it work. And 600 ton kilometers freight saved, 204 tons CO2 liters. And this concept is now being adopted in other cities as well. But it's the government role that was crucial in making this work. The European Logistics Platform, I really like it because I see that one of the big challenges, I'm not sure if New Zealand that's the case, is the parallel universes that business and government sometimes operate, you know, and the government officials not always coming out of the beehive here, I think it is, to talk. And it's about how do you get that conversation going in a non-confrontational way. And what the European Logistics Platform has, they set up an advisory board of MPs, so members of parliament of the European Commission, and a number of business executives, and all they do, they pick 4 topics a year that are relevant to them. And then they have 4 events per year in Brussels, usually starting at 5, over dinner, finishing by 8:30, and they go home again. But what it does, it allows the exchange between industry and government. And the topics range where I presented once, which was about should we mandate carbon emissions accounting, right? And so I could explain the story, but it can also be about how is the refugee crisis impacting freight across borders, you know? So it's really a range of topics. Very useful. I believe something like this being set up here on climate, so it's probably something you've tried. But then the ones in London I like is that they were finding that 55% of cycling fatalities in London were caused by heavy-duty vehicles, and most of them by construction trucks. And so they put a partnership together with different industry bodies, the customers, logistics operators, the contractors, regulatory bodies, to see how can we reduce it. It's a massive partnership here. And what they looked at is the blind spots, how they can better have mirrors, better signage of the trucks, but also making cyclists aware to have more brighter clothing on. They put cyclists in trucks and trucks on the bike to get better understanding of what should we change. And like you see on the photo there, they changed the design of some of these trucks to have windows all the way to the bottom, so the truck driver literally sees the cyclists. Huge success and really carried by industry, but stimulated by government. São Paulo in Brazil, this was a university that initiated it because they did a study. Yeah, as you usually have academic studies, and they thought, hey, hang on, we should do something about this. During the day, so the yellow lines where you start getting traffic jams, heavy traffic, basically from 7 a.m. till 10 at night. And at night you have a 70–80% capacity on the road that's not utilized. So what they did, they put together a CBD of São Paulo. They had 44 companies, all in shopping malls, etc., having goods needed to be delivered to them. And they said, how can we improve this? And they did 2 things. One, they looked at night delivery, so how can we make sure that goods are delivered at night? And second, they look at how can we jointly deliver things. So there's 2 elements to it. And as a result, they together came up with a design of different terminals being located around the city to service that CBD. Yeah. Now, the only thing I don't have yet is the result of how much CO2, but I'm gonna chase that one up. But what I liked about this is that it was such a combination of everybody wins. And the beauty is, the main concern of residents in that area was noise. And he said, hey, but why are we not looking at electric trucks? They don't make any noise. So electric trucks bring a benefit of less noise and enables night delivery where otherwise it might not be acceptable. Rotterdam, as you see there, we started building this port in the 1400s, so long before you and I were born. But as you see to the left, it's all reclaimed land. And what they do there is because then the container ships don't need to go all the way in the port anymore. They just drop their goods off and they go. And as container ships got bigger, it just was really, really necessary. That Maasvlakte 2, that yellow piece, is the biggest ships in the world. I mean, they just go there and they dump and then they go again. They don't even reach the inland of the port. Now, that piece was, that extension, that final extension was also close to a nature reserve. The environmental groups were very, very concerned. There were protests. And then they came with a compromise. Okay, you can do it if only Euro 6 trucks allowed. And as we heard, the Euro 6 trucks are less emissions. In the new terminals, there's now a dedicated quay for inland vessels. And there's investment in railway connectivity. So you don't get like what the gentleman from Kiwi Rail has. You actually maximize the ability to immediately transfer from your container ships onto rail, on inland waterways, and not be dependent on the truck connection, because once you've got it on a truck, you're not then going to get it out of the truck and on a rail anymore. Terminals run entirely on wind power, and the buildings have thermal storage. Win-win. Environment groups happy they finally got something. I think this would be something to study for Auckland. Yeah. Civil society, so what you saw, and this is an example, I spoke to someone over lunch, over tea break, that the risk is that government is concerned about the topic, say environment or air pollution or whatever, and they put a tax on it, yeah, carbon tax, a fuel tax or whatever tax, and then you don't know where that ends up, right? And it doesn't solve the problem. So what here the case was, and I really, really admire this NGO, there is low sulfur fuel in ships, but at the moment that's only mandated in what they call environmental control areas, and that's around the coast of both the US, both sides, North America and Europe, Western Europe. And if ships go there, they must change to low sulfur fuel within 200 kilometers of the coastline. And as a result, you have massive reductions in air pollution and thus massive health benefits. That's the real reason why this happened. But that did not apply to the majority of the developing world, including Hong Kong. Now, Civic Exchange, which is a Hong Kong NGO, and in Hong Kong you have actually very active NGOs. They put together marine carriers and cruise ships operators on the right, most of whom also operate in the West. And they were seeing not a level playing field, because they have the ships that need to carry different types of fuel come to Hong Kong or anywhere in China, India or Asia or Latin America for that matter, and cannot compete with the local carriers that only operate in that region and do not need to invest in the more sophisticated ships. So they see themselves being priced out. So what they said, why don't we do a trial, and they called it the Fair Winds Charter, that whenever they're at berth, so in the harbor, they use it. It costs per TEU $2 per TEU for dry, so that's dry goods, and 3 for reefer, so when you have like a cooling. Eh? So really minimal cost. It's only in the days you're in the port, but because that's also where the biggest exposure to people is, the air pollution impacts are huge. 20% of Hong Kong's air pollution comes from ships. So there's a huge reputational risk as well. So these companies thought, let's do it. Now, and then what happened? They had this same NGO and started having discussions with the government. The government saw it worked. Companies were not going to hold it back, and they thought, you know what, we'll make it policy. NGOs don't exist in China, or they exist but difficult, they're condoned. Yeah? Now it's the basis for setting up an ICA for the entire China East Coast. That NGO is maybe 20 people. Yeah, it's possible, and it takes a leader to see this and do it. Yeah. This one, I'm sure you're going to like that one. And I write if it works, because I'm not sure if it works, right? But this is called, well, it's flying whales, the freight zeppelin, we can call it what you want to. But this is, I've now come across 3 companies that are working on this. And essential is you've got helium balloons, and they can carry 60 tons of freight. So it's about, I understood from Ian, like logging trucks, about 50 tons, so, equivalent to a truck. And this has been initiated in France, and the reason why they wanted it because of forestry. They're finding that there's forestry areas that are inaccessible, and because of that they cannot maximize the opportunity of that sector. China got interested because they want to develop the inland, the west, but that's really hard terrain to get to. So they're looking at how can we economically develop it. Morocco is interested because they see a lot of Central Africa. There's a lot of agriculture happening, but the goods don't reach the coast in time to get to consumers because there's no infrastructure, and by the time they reach there, the goods are all rotten. So they see an opportunity of, if we can unlock inaccessible areas, we do it. The three of them are going to announce this at the COP22 in a few weeks. So this is serious business. Aerospace sector has been involved in this, and I don't know if it works, but at the same time, this is not totally off topic either. Yeah? If you've got three governments, including China, behind it, they're not going to do this if they lose face tomorrow. So I see the opportunity for New Zealand. If this works, it would be massive change for your logging industry. And yeah, so. And the final one is about green freight programs. There's many initiatives around the world, and I know ICA essentially has been setting up one for trucking here. The one that I just want to show a few because I want to explain why they worked. So the one in SmartWay, which has been the oldest since 2004, it started in US. It's now then it's expanded to Canada, and at the COP meeting in a few weeks they're going to announce that also Mexico is going to be part of this. They have more than 3,000 members, carriers, LSPs and shippers, covering almost 25% of road freight, and the focus is on the shipper-carrier relationships, where shippers say we will buy our freight from SmartWay carriers. So it becomes a condition. But the data that these carriers give to US EPA is not given in absolute terms to the shippers. They get categorized into like great, good, reasonable, 4 categories. So the information detail is not enough to disclose your commercial sensitivity, but is enough to have a marketing, an added marketing value for the customers. And that has worked really well. So you have companies like IKEA, Unilever, HP that say we only work with SmartWay truckers. And I've visited several of these companies myself. The moment that price is comparable, CO2 can make the shift. Yeah? It's not a deciding factor, but it can just make that difference. Now, and the results speak for themselves. So one thing that they really did is monitor how much this would save. So you're looking at 10 million cars off the road for a year, but massive amounts of money, oil, and emissions reductions. This is a key to any program that you measure the results. Otherwise, you don't keep momentum. Lean and Green in Europe, it's now more than 300 companies. It's now operational in 5 countries and expanding. I like that they have a country approach because the French don't speak English and the Germans don't like to speak French, whichever way. But there's a local flavor of how truckers operate, and especially if you're working with carriers, you must make sure that they feel the national flavor to it. But the concept is the same. The entry level is very low. You can basically come on board and you have to commit to 20% reduction in your emissions, and you get all the support you want to do it. But you can only get 4 stars if you have cross-supply chain operation. So a Heinz needs to work with a Coca-Cola, which is difficult, which requires trust. But the vision behind it is to drive towards that Internet of Things vision. And it just takes steps to do it. You can join, you can also stay low if you like, but you have leaders that are now pushing each other to go further and further up the chain. For carriers, we have different programs, and the ones that I mentioned list here. Their aim is to help carriers, not the collaboration with shippers. And if I would have one suggestion for the ICA program is one way or the other make the link to shippers, because they can really help in getting momentum for this. Either it can be about technologies or about training or about a broader action plan approach. And the final one that I wanted to share with you, and then at the end, then we can have lunch, is the logistics carbon reduction scheme. And I put this slide on last, and I only added it yesterday. because I think this would be a real opportunity for New Zealand. Somebody mentioned about the data and about how do we balance the need for data and at the same time not wanting to disclose the confidentiality of the carriers. This is exactly what this scheme was battling against as well. Plus they were worried that the government would legislate. So they set up this thing. The aim is to demonstrate that the logistics sector is contributing to climate change targets, and that because of that they don't need taxation and they don't need the law. And how they do that, they have the UK Freight Transport Association collecting data from these carriers anonymously, so they're not shared. Huh? And as a result, they make a collative report that shows the total footprint of the sector. And subsequently, they also check with these companies, so what have you been doing or trying to do on your fuel efficiency, on maximizing payload, on empty running, the fuels you use, and finally the modal split. So by doing so, they get a sense of where industry is heading, and they ask, and what are your challenges? Because that's what an association should do, right? And then those challenges are taken to government. So they say to government, right, from our surveys, these and these and these are challenges, and this is what we propose you to address it. But this information also gets used to calculate CO2 per ton kilometers that shippers can use to calculate their footprint, but without disclosing the commercial data of individual carriers. I really like it, it's focused, and finally they have awards. So whoever's best does get awards, and they certainly do make sure that if there are companies that have really done something really innovative, or either in the monitoring or in the actions they've done, that they get recognition. And I like it because it's focused and it has a clear link with the government. So, takeaway? Collaboration again, and I just want to say collaboration between government, private sector, civil society is essential. You cannot do it as a government alone, or civil society alone, or private sector. I also would like to say that when people say PPP, so it's public, so it's like government and private sector is not enough either. You often need, you know, a business council, other NGOs, universities to make that collaboration or to do the research. There's many types that exist, and remember, most collaborations have nothing to do with CO2. CO2 is the co-benefit. So look in collaborations in different ways. It might help in cost or road safety or whatever. It doesn't matter what the entry door is as long as the result is the same. It starts with leadership. Every single initiative, it was two people meeting each other, deciding to do something. A woman having an innovative idea and deciding, I'm going to change the world and this is how I'm doing it. An NGO in Hong Kong saying, you know what, we want to change the whole coast of shipping, but we'll just start with a few companies. And that's how you get change going. And New Zealand needs to work out what collaboration suit best, but I'm sure you have enough creativity and enthusiasm to get that going. And lastly, if I can be of help in connecting you with people who have done this or can help think you through some ideas, I would be glad to help. Thank you.